It's nefarious, man. Like, the brain works in fucked up ways.
The mind is one of the most deceiving, manipulative pieces of equipment, flesh, human bodies on earth. I never have trusted my brain.
All of that weight lives in your head, and you are the decision maker.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
Hi, it's Ronsley. If this is your first volume, welcome. This is a weekly series where I go inside the mind of an entrepreneur, artist, athlete, academic, to decipher what is the psychology of our decisions. Merry Christmas, everyone, and I wish you so much awesomeness for 2020. This is the last volume for 2019, and if there was one gift I'd love for Christmas this year, is for you to share this podcast with someone. It doesn't have to be on any of your socials or in an email to your database or a tattoo on your forearm. The easiest way to direct someone is to send them to listen.psychologyofentrepreneurship.com. If they are on their mobile device, it'll take them to iTunes for Apple and Google Play for Android. And if they're on the web, it'll take them to the website. One link to rule them all. Lord of the Rings joke. Anyway, listen.psychologyofentrepreneurship.com. So, thank you for my Christmas present. I love it. You are so kind. What can I get you? Today, we go to Boulder, Colorado to talk with this legend.
I'm David Cohen. I'm one of the founders of Techstars, which is the worldwide network that helps entrepreneurs succeed.
If you don't know Techstars, I think it would be wise for you to search up on them. With all the amazing people I was interviewing, well, what I really mean is with all the experience I was getting from traveling around the world, preparing for these interviews, and then getting over my fear of meeting these amazing people who, by the way, are famous in their own right and circles, asking weird-ass questions, being embarrassed, wanting the world to eat me up whole, and then waking up and going again at it. With all these reps, I had these new ideas for who I wanted to get inside the mind of. And I wanted to get inside the mind of a giver, an entrepreneur, a creative, a starter of businesses, who also is an investor in quite a few companies.
There's a big challenge in starting a new company, right? I'm as an investor, over 2,000 companies in the portfolio, most of that with Techstars, but some in my kind of personal angel portfolio as well. And, you sort of feel like at that point you've seen everything, but then you realize every day that actually you haven't. There's always something new. But I think this is one of the biases that Techstars has about not funding companies that are founded by one person. We really like to found teams, to fund teams that are founding a company together. And the reason is because almost by definition, any individual is going to hit a wall, get frustrated. You don't have a support system for that, you're in trouble, right? And especially in the context of an accelerator, which can be a high pressure environment for 3 months. And so we more or less filter it out. To have someone that's just by themselves for that very reason. And, you need someone that when you're up, they're down and vice versa, right? And you can, when you literally hit the wall, and I can remember, being angry and literally hitting a wall, right? The other person says, we're going to be okay, we'll figure this out, right? And you have that support. So I think that's really key.
Support system. What is your support system?
Speaking of support systems, do you remember when Jordan Exani said this?
At the end of that conversation, ask them, what do you think you need? Oh, I don't want to feel this way. Well, maybe we should try to find you some support together. That's all you have to do. You don't have to be that. It's not a life or death situation from that conversation, right? And oftentimes I think we can just feel so paralyzed. One of the biggest things I think that we encourage people to do within our business and like the workshops we teach and whatnot, is like just to give people a little bit of confidence that they can ask meaningful questions of each other that does support each other's wellness. And that's not as binary as I'm alone or I'm speaking to a therapist. Like there's a lot in between the two.
Before we go any further into this volume, I would like to stress how important support is on this journey that we are all on. This audio documentary has been created to be a kind of a online support system of sorts, one where you and I realize that we are not alone in the stuff we deal with, not alone in feeling like we are all alone, not alone in how we go after life. Sometimes the aloneness or loneliness comes not because there are no other people around us, but more because we fail to enjoy being with ourselves. Failing being with ourselves results in us failing to be ourselves. And the cycle is vicious. So here is the question that I need your soul to hear. If, for whatever reason, you don't like spending time with yourself, and as a result make your life busy from one thing to the next, why would anyone else enjoy spending time with you? And, like I said, I don't need an answer. I would just like the best part of you to hear that question. But Dave, why do you do what you do?
I think ultimately for me, it's just enjoyment of what I do and the impact of what I do. I don't really need more resources. I don't crave more resources. So I'm lucky in that way. So I'm not doing it for any of those reasons, right? I think being famous probably sucks. I work hard to avoid that. I don't want that either, right? And so, I'm doing the thing that I'm doing because I feel like it has impact and that it's helpful to others. And yeah, there's a byproduct of it generates, resources and flow for me personally, but that's no longer the motivation. It hasn't been for a long time.
And influences are key, right? I am influenced every single day. You are too, by the way. To think otherwise is unwise. And you've got to remember confirmation bias and Laura Peterson from Volume 10.
So confirmation bias is we humans, all of us, not the left, not the right, not the females or the male, everybody, we tend to look for information that confirms what we already believe. This is proven with science. So my father is very conservative politically, and so if we watch the exact same news conference, he will say,
"Did you see how XYZ reinforces what I already believe?"
And I myself am independent. I don't like either side, but I'm very much not extreme right. So I'll say, but what about ABC? I saw those things that reinforce my belief. And so we can literally have the exact same experience and take it completely different ways. And that's because of confirmation bias.
You talked about that, podcast that influenced you. One thing that influenced me a ton was, this notion of, plentiful, right? The idea that, the utility of money is something that people can read about. If someone has $100,000 or $150,000, their life is fundamentally the same, even though that's a huge change in sort of net worth from that perspective. If someone has, say $1 million or $10 million, they can do different things and they can have different impact and they can have a different level of, maybe happiness, and although that's not always equated. They certainly travel better. They can certainly do more stuff. There's a different utility. But, at some point you say, gosh, I don't, the life I live, I'm not trying to level it up, right? It's plenty good. And, kids are taken care of, families taken care of. And so you realize that that's not the driver.
I've come a long way since Volume 4 and Tucker Max saying this line that got my attention.
Now, I'm not saying some people aren't driven by their mission. Some people are, but it's easy to conflate those two. And a lot of people convince themselves it's about mission when really it's about, I'm going to show daddy or whatever, right? I definitely know people who I think maybe started to fill a void, but then they kind of accomplished what they were looking for and it wasn't satisfactory. And so then how do you keep going?
If you've listened to previous volumes, you would have heard me speak about how I didn't feel any of my successes. If you haven't listened to any of the previous volumes, it's not like a textbook. You can go back and listen to the previous volumes. Each volume goes inside the mind of an amazing human being. So, David, do you feel the impact you've already made on this planet? Do you feel the gravity of your creations? Does it even sink in?
It's a great question because I probably, like most people, don't do that enough. I don't reflect on that enough. I would say when you talk about that ambulance dispatch company, which is now part of a much larger conglomerate that was bought by somebody that bought it, and et cetera, but it's still going. It's probably 400 or 500 employees. So there's the employee thing. Like you feel like, oh, you're creating opportunity for people. And when you look at the Techstars portfolio, right? I mean, that's tens of thousands of jobs, probably more. And that feels good, right? Of course, those people will be working somewhere else, but they're working on a thing that feels interesting and innovative. So that's a nice thing to look back on. I would say, with the ambulance dispatch software specifically, last time I looked, there were 20 million ambulance dispatches that had gone out on that software. That's a lot of people that you're helping, probably a few that you didn't help, because software is never perfect. But, you think about those people are in a moment of distress and you have software that can get an ambulance there quicker, right, with the right equipment and stuff. Like that's still running in the world. And I go to places, I still see that software, even though it looks old to me 20 years later. So it's those lasting things. I mean, as a software engineer, that the best thing is when somebody's using your stuff, right? Like that's why we do it. And then I guess the other thing I would say I would have some pride in is what I would call kind of the meta impact of mentorship and encouraging a generation of entrepreneurs to give back to the next one, and organizing, kind of mentorship activity where you have people that maybe were successful that, could be sitting on a yacht somewhere, but they're investing in startups and giving back to the startup community. And that is a very powerful long-term dynamic too. So, I get some pride about those things. There are plenty of things I screwed up along the way too, and could have done a lot better and had a lot more impact. But hopefully those are things that I can, sit in the rocking chair and think about.
In a survey of over 200 entrepreneurs and small business owners, 78% said that they did not have a mentor when they were starting their business. Of this group, 89% said that they wish that they had had a mentor at this time.
So here's the deal. If you are a creative being like me, like Dave, freedom is vital to create. You can achieve that freedom to create from three things. And you need all three things to achieve true freedom to create. So here they are. Number one, systems to automate the mundane. Number two, resources to sustain the creation. And number three, a space and time to create. If you want to know more about achieving freedom to create, get to the website and send me a voice message. I like hearing voices. Ronsley, you weirdo. But Dave, about creating.
I've had one job interview in my whole life, right? I was like you, I was a programmer. My first job was just programming, right? I got that job because that's when I went to school to learn, and I didn't really know who I was yet. And I did that for a little bit, and I realized I'm just called to start things, right? To be an entrepreneur, to create. And so that's what I've been doing my whole life. And for me, it is fairly natural to start a thing. I view it as like art, and programming is like art too, right? It's creating something from nothing, and seeing it come to life. Yeah. And that's what I love about entrepreneurship also. So, my mindset is I love doing that. I don't mind the risk of it because I ask myself, what's the worst thing that can happen? I could always go get a job somewhere, right? Sure. But do I know it's going to be successful? Do I have extreme confidence? Absolutely not, right? It's, you just feel lucky that it's starting to work if it is. And I've had failure too, right? You experience entire companies that fail. So that's part of the game.
So here's the deal. I am, and because you are listening, probably you are too, interested in achieving this freedom to create. There is a Japanese word called ikigai, which is when these four things come together, you achieve ikigai. 1, you do what you love. 2, you get paid to do it. 3, the world needs it. And 4, you're good at doing it. So with Dave especially, I want to know if there was some sort of natural motivation involved.
I feel like I got lucky in that the first thing I worked on was ambulance dispatch software. And I told you the story earlier. I had one job interview in my life. That was the job I got, was working for an ambulance dispatch company, building software. And I said, we can do this better, right? And created a service to do it better. And, it's pretty easy to get motivated about getting an ambulance to pick somebody up when they're hurt, right? So I had this natural, intrinsic motivation that I didn't need to create for myself. I was thinking about the person laying there with the broken leg, right, when I was creating the software. And that is a nice natural motivator. Is that the business I would start today, given, what I know about myself? Probably not, but it was lucky in the sense that it had that built-in motivation. Had that been the ad unit company and someone had pitched me on, how much money we could make doing this, I think it would be a special form of torture because I don't know anything, care at all about that. I don't want to make that better. And to spend my time and my energy doing that, I would have just been done, right? And it would have been something that didn't work. It's too hard. You're going to quit. So a lot of people will need to figure that out about themselves. A lot of people might get lucky and have some built-in motivation that feels like they want to put their life into.
Sitting in that chair in Boulder, Colorado, Dave Cohen gave me a gift he didn't even know he gave me. It never occurred to me that I was drawn to software engineering because I am a creator. I love making things from nothing. All this while, I thought my engineering work was all technical in nature. I mean, engineering is built on science. Science is right and wrong. There isn't much space for maybe in there. It never occurred to me the part about expression in writing code and seeing that code do something that couldn't be done before that code was written. So, David, since we started to speak, which hasn't been long, but there has been a recurring theme of you wanting to help the world. I don't think it's a statement you made per se, but it's the things you say and the things that mean a lot to you. Do you know why that is?
I just think it's innate in people, right? I mean, you want to, look, we're all here for a short period of time. Different people believe different things. I believe you get a short period of time and that's it. And so, do something good with your time here. But it's back to human relationships, right? If you can leave the world a little bit better than you found it, that's sort of all you can ask of anyone, right? And I think, when people say, why did you create Techstars? What I usually say is, because I believe that entrepreneurs make the world a better place. I believe that innovations make the world a better place. And, we don't fund things that don't do that fundamentally. If there's, we've stayed away from, obviously things like pornography or things like even cannabis, right, which is not legal, everywhere. We just decide that we'd rather put our money and our energy into things that are clearly helpful to the world. And so to me, it's just innate. It's sort of how I think as a human. Yeah. And it's not an attempt to create legacy or anything like that. It's just, I want to be able to point to something and say that thing is doing good. And look, there's giving back to this foundation that's doing this other good. And there's network effects around it. Huge believer in networks for good, generally.
There's always that voice that comes up when we think of doing everything for good. What if I get taken advantage of? No one wants to look like a fool or feel like one. So the question comes up about the people that are different in nature to the general giving type of people, I suppose.
I always try hard not to sort of have judgment about how people think because it's what you said, right? They grow up with a different bias. They have a different set of experiences. We all have biases. We all have experiences. Adam Grant's book, of course, Give and Take on this topic is an awesome read if you haven't checked that out. But, some people are balancers, right? They view it as transactions. Like, I'll do that for you if you do this for me, or if you pay me whatever. Other people are takers, right? And they're just going to take. And it's hard for givers, right, to recognize that that's what happens with takers. So I think that People who naturally think about helping others are just my people. And I try to surround myself with people like that. I don't think the other people are bad.
Sure.
I think they just have a different way of going about life. And I don't think it's as powerful. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am.
David, how much of success comes down to luck?
Oh my God, it's almost exclusively luck. I mean, any entrepreneur you talk to that's had any measure of success that doesn't say that is just full of crap.
Yeah, but also I think it's the movement, because the more we move, the more we take action, the more luck we create. And I think that has got a huge part to play in how lucky, quote unquote, we are.
I don't remember what the old saying is, but it sort of like put yourself in a good position to get lucky, right? If you're not skating to where the puck's going to be, if you're not, getting in front of the goal before the person shoots, you're not going to get the rebound, right? And if you're sitting there watching the game and not in it, you're probably not going to get lucky. So, hustle does have something to do with it.
When we come back, how Techstars is chipping away at mental health in entrepreneurship, and my favorite story of David in a stairwell.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
The main objective of this audio project is to bring together entrepreneurs and creatives who share similar values in a place where conversation can be had without judgment. A place where our listeners can give us constructive feedback to improve this show with topic and guest recommendations. For access to full-length interviews and access to that place, go to mustamplify.com/POE and click the button.
Before the break, we were digging inside the mind of a creator. Now, the serious bits. The serious bit is that creating anything and putting yourself and your creations out into the world feels like the loneliest place in the world. But I want you to know that you are not alone. This audio documentary exists because I wanted to put my effort and time and money where my mouth is, pun intended. And David has started companies, has helped start companies, has invested in companies and mentored companies to greatness. He would have definitely had a perspective on this. David?
As investors in thousands of companies, you're going to run into people who are distraught, people who feel like they've raised money from someone and didn't return it, who take personal responsibility for that. In the context of the accelerator, it's a 3-month pressure cooker. It's designed to help you do more faster and build your network, but it's unsustainable activity beyond the 3 months. You have people that can just kind of get lost, right? They can forget who they are. They can literally crack. They can become suicidal, and you want to help with that in any way you can. It is part of the unfortunate reality of entrepreneurship. So to ignore it is crazy. We don't do enough. If you think about who Techstars is, we're 300 people. Probably 150 of us have started companies. Probably 100 of us are CEOs of those companies. So we've been through that too. And, we just want people to know that if you're not getting the support you need from your peers or in your context you're in, like, we're here. And I'd say that's true of any entrepreneur in any context. It doesn't have to be in our portfolio. And we're not going to solve your problem, right? But we're going to try to help, right? So we have incredible resources. Another guy, if you had time in Boulder to interview, would be Jerry Colonna, who is a peer to Philip in his own world. They know each other. He's probably the best CEO coach on the planet. And he will jump in certain situations and help with that. So we just need to help people understand that they're not alone. That really is the phrase I use a lot about Techstars is you're not alone, right? Startups being CEO, it all feels lonely, but I have 1,000 other people that are going through that, that I can connect you with. And, several of us on the executive team here have been through our own, challenges with just emotional health or, not balancing life out at all, right? And either overcome it or still struggle with it. So it's just a fact of life in entrepreneurship, and you almost can never do enough about it.
As creators, we are usually creating something to scratch our own itch in a way. And even though I hated it, every time someone asked me this one question when the Psychology of Entrepreneurship came out for the first time, I knew under all that hate was something that needed to be looked at. And the question was, are you creating this to feel like an imposter? When I did the first round of interviews, I thought I was doing the world a favor by giving the listener ways to overcome their imposter syndrome. And then I realized how much I had it. But it is easy to put a label on yourself and say I have imposter syndrome, because that label usually, not always, but usually gives us some sort of sympathy, which feels like connection, which we all crave. But if you step back from that label, the actual meaning of having imposter syndrome is that we feel like an imposter or fake in what we're doing or creating. So, I suppose this is a good time for a confession. Yes, I did feel like an imposter in what I was doing. Merry fucking Christmas, everyone. What was happening was I used to not feel any of my accomplishments, so I didn't understand what gave me the right to create certain things, like the first podcasting conference in Australia, or the first partnership with Amazon in Australia, or even this. It's cathartic, this audio documentary. More so in this volume than others, I feel most connected to express. Enough about my expression. Dave definitely had stuff to say about imposter syndrome.
Anytime someone talks about imposter syndrome, it really doesn't matter who you're talking to, because pretty much everyone has it. Right? Well, it's whether or not they admit it, especially if they're doing anything that's sort of, grown or become impactful. And my version of that is, why on one hand, why are there 300 employees and, a world of investors that actually think that they should entrust us with their career. And when you get into limited partners in our funds, like, why are people giving us like $500 million to go invest? Are they crazy? That's sort of the thing that rolls around your head. And am I really any better at this than someone that you would pick off the street? And why me, right? And I have that like literally every day. And you try to channel it towards thankfulness and gratefulness, right? But the hardest part, we're funding 500 companies a year, a couple $100,000 per company. You can do the math. That money has to come from somewhere. It doesn't all flow back because we're growing every year, the footprint of the platform. So some of it flows back, but you're investing more every year. So you've always got to be, thinking about the capital to come in the future and, sitting there going like, can I do this? Like, is there any reason that someone would invest $1 billion in this? Right. And there is an economic reason, but am I the person that can do that? And, maybe not. Right. And you sort of doubt it, but then you think backwards, you're like, why did they already give me this money? And oh my gosh, I hope that performs, and all that, same pressure and thinking of, I'm running this company, helping run this company. Like, am I even qualified to do that? I've never run a company this big before. Right. So it's just ever present. And I think it's ever present for especially CEOs, but investors, founders. Founder who raises a $500,000 seed round is wondering, well, those people must be crazy. Why did they give me that money? Hopefully they're wondering that. But I think, believe in yourself a little bit. But it's at every level in every organization. I mean, the president of the United States, I'm sure, is wondering, maybe not in this case. 2019. But generally, I would hope that that person would be saying, why was I entrusted with this incredible, platform, this incredible opportunity, this incredible responsibility.
All this stuff must manifest in ways that make us hit a wall, right?
I remember in the first company that I started, losing a prospect that we thought was going to change everything. And, this was a bootstrapped company. We never raised any money from anyone other than our customers, which is unique today.
Yeah.
But, we had a prospect that we didn't get, and we'd spent a lot of time and energy on it, and the bank account was near zero. And we were stressing about whether we could buy a printer or not for the office. I mean, it was that, sort of situation. And, it's just frustration. And I remember going into a stairwell in the building that we were in and hurting my hand because I hit the wall. And it's a metaphor, but, I'm not a person that you would normally expect would literally hit a wall or express frustration that way. And I remember, David Brown, my co-founder one of my co-founders in that company, coming into that stairwell and saying, dude, it's okay. And I was like, screw this. Let's quit. This is never going to work, right? We're killing ourselves here and we're not getting anywhere. And, he brought me back up. And I can remember doing similar things for him, but, I hurt my hand that day, and that's why I remember it.
It has been a little while since Volume 1 and the 13th of September when that volume went live. Friday the 13th, by the way. But you must remember.
My name is Philip McKernan. I'm the founder of One Last Talk. I'm a coach, and I deliver and run retreats all over the world for entrepreneurs and leaders who are seeking clarity about their present and about their future.
President of HJK Global Solutions, Holly J. Kyle, states that the best thing that you can do for your business as an entrepreneur is to make your health a priority.
Dave and I are unfortunately friends with Philip McKernan. That is what we have in common. I say unfortunately because being friends with Philip forces you to be truthful to yourself, which I have spent my entire adult life running or hiding away from. So, in fact, Philip introduced me to David, and everyone remembers the first time they heard or witnessed a One Last Talk.
Yeah, One Last Talk. I went to the one in Boulder, 6 months or a year ago, and it was on a weekend, and I had no idea what to expect. Philip just said, you got to come to this thing, and someday you'll be on stage doing this. I said, well, I'm an introvert. I don't know if I'll ever do that. But I came, and I just crying, I've never spent an entire day just basically crying, right? So emotional. And, that'll turn a lot of people off from the event, but basically people are standing up saying the one last thing they would ever say to the world, right? Even though they're not, it's not the last thing, they're pretending that it would be. And what would they want to convey to the world? And the stories are just so incredibly powerful, right? People that have gotten out of a long-term jail sentence talking about, when the thing happened that put them in jail and how they feel about it today and their journey. People talking about, abuse, right? They were abused maybe as a child in some way. And God, it's just such an emotional thing. And it's a construct that I loved the first time I saw it, which is just a mental model of, this is the last time you'll be able to say something to the world. What do you want to say? It's meaningful. And I immediately thought of the startups that I work with. And I thought of Startup Weekend, which we run 1,000 times a year in 120 countries. And I said, there's 100,000 would-be entrepreneurs going to these things. Like, what if we inspired them and said, what if this was your one last startup, right? And Philip and I were just rapping on it after that event. And, sort of naturally clicked for both of us that that's powerful because people go and build, really nice companies that make, ad units 1% more efficient and drive some, cool efficiency into, and it's maybe worth a lot. But is it the last thing you'd ever do as art? Back to what we talked about earlier, startups are art. And if you only got one left in you and you have that mindset, what would you do next? And if we can get the entrepreneurs thinking about that at the inception of their company, that can be powerful for sort of doing good in the world and having actual impact rather than, no offense to people working on ad units, but it's not changing lives or making the world a better place.
David, we were talking about one last startup, and when you mentioned about people starting stuff, it seems like they start stuff for the wrong reasons, and there is no better person to ask than someone who loves to start stuff and has helped hundreds of thousands of people to start stuff. So what's happening there that makes us start stuff from the wrong place? Is it mentorship that is failing us as a collective? Is it social media? Is it hustle porn? What do you think, David? What stops us from attempting something that's going to change the world? What makes us play small?
Well, I mean, the thing I see over and over again, in effectively being part of the founding story of thousands of companies, is the thinking about, why they're doing it is often not front and center early on. And, Simon Sinek, Start with Why, huge proponent of that. Pretty much the first meeting I ever have with any entrepreneur is like, tell me why you're doing this and not something else. And if I see something in their background that feels like it's obviously suited to something else, I just say, why aren't you doing something in music? Like, it seems like you love music. And it's love, right? It's like the thing you actually care about. Because entrepreneurship is really hard and most people are going to fail. And you might as well fail doing something that you actually care about and have a vision for changing the world regarding that thing. So I think what people do is they get out their spreadsheets and, they read about the venture capital and, the $100 million fundraise, and they view that as success. WeWork's in the news today, right? It hasn't led to necessarily success for all those employees. And that happens a lot, right? It's sort of coveting the wrong things. And so the thing I always push on hard is, why this? Why were you put on this earth to do this thing? I love the ad of, what if it's the last thing you could ever do? Because people say, well, I want to do that later. No, do that now, because that's what you love. None of the companies I ever started were started to create wealth. They were started to have a fun thing to work on that I was actually excited about doing, to create a product. Maybe the chance of that, but not front and center. So I would say that the people who are starting with the spreadsheet and saying, I'm doing this because it's a great business, have a very high chance of failure and have a lot to learn. So don't start with the spreadsheet? Yeah, I mean, I think if you're being stopped by there's no ROI, you're doing it wrong. That's what I meant by my spreadsheet comment. I think starting startups from the spreadsheet is totally the wrong way to go. I think it has to start from the heart and what you actually care about, because that'll motivate you through the hard times. So, when people say, I don't want to do that because I don't know how I'd ever make any money doing that. You'll figure that out, right? I've had enough experiences where, Techstar is a great example, right? There was really no growth model, no real business model to speak of. And it's angel investing. It's usually not going to work, right? But when you scale it, you have opportunities like working with large corporations to power their innovation systems, to raising venture funds. I had a mentor once that, this guy named Bill Warner, who's a fantastic entrepreneur and investor in Boston. Something I'll never forget is sitting at dinner with me, and he said, David, there's the center flow and there's the co-flow. And the center flow is the thing that you love and that you care about, and you can never stop pushing on it. You can never stop making progress on the center flow. The co-flows emerge, right? And that's where the business is. You just do the thing that you love. You do the best job you can at it, and things will emerge around it that are opportunities that come from the fact that you're focused on the center flow. And if you lose sight of the center flow and you go off and you say, I don't care about helping entrepreneurs succeed anymore, or whatever your passion is, and you just say, wow, there's this opportunity to go over here to this corporate innovation thing or this venture thing, and you give up on the center flow, the rest evaporates. That's, to me, the art part is just focus on the thing that you actually care about. Opportunities will emerge all around it. Don't worry, they'll come if you're excellent at that center flow and never lose sight of it. And I found that was true even with programming. That's probably true with, things like podcasting, right? Or having a media site, that people would say, well, that's not a scalable business. You say, I don't care. I love it. And I guarantee you things will emerge around it if you love it enough.
I love center flow. I guarantee that this part.
That's, to me, the art part is just focus on the thing that you actually care about. Opportunities will emerge all around it. Don't worry, they'll come if you're excellent at that center flow, and never lose sight of it.
Is going to repeat itself in upcoming volumes. And before we go and break for the next 2 weeks, I want to remind you what the stuff of life is. Actually, I want to remind myself what the stuff of life is. Well, really, I want David to tell us what the stuff of life is.
That's the stuff of life, right? It's relationships, and he'll open doors for me, right? I'll try to do the same for my friends, and I think they're people that we believe have the same values, same motivations, which is to actually genuinely help people. And I think that's who I try to surround myself with, is people that think about, we call it give first, but how can I be helpful? I don't need anything in return, but I know that magically, if I do that, the universe is going to give me good stuff back too. I have no idea what it's going to be, where it's going to come from, who it's going to come from. And it's not at all transactional, but I find that when you think about relationships that way, it's incredibly powerful for the long term. Things come back to you in completely unexpected ways.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
Coming up in 2020 on the Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
I'm Mike Brown, and I started an oil and gas company, which I am currently in the process of leaving to go do something else. But I made it through by the skin of my teeth, and I managed to graduate, and that was another very happy day, because I think creating that environment really allows people to be their best, because they get immediate feedback. They're given next steps in order to improve, so they walk away knowing exactly what they have to do in order to show up the next time even better. Once you gain that understanding and you say, no, I still think it's a better way, then it's going to be a genuinely great improvement, typically. When the pressure was on, we got our first deal done.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
That, by the way, is the jet fighter pilot I keep talking about. That is volume 15, out in January. I interviewed David because he is just such an amazing human being. I love every moment I get to connect with David. He has founded several companies and has invested in hundreds of startups such as Uber, Twilio, SendGrid, Full Contact, and Sphero. In total, these investments have gone on to create more than $100 billion in value. He is one of the co-founders of Techstars, which I believe is the world's nicest startup accelerator program that is built on the Give First principles, which is a podcast, by the way, that you can find on any of your favorite podcast players. Techstars only accepts approximately 1% of all applications. The Techstars experience has been turned into a TV reality show on Bloomberg TV. He and Brad Feld co-authored the book Do More Faster, Techstars Lessons to Accelerate Your Startup. He is a deep thinker, a creator, and a friend.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
This is a Must Amplify production. Special thanks to every guest expert that has appeared on the show. Editing and sound design by Kelly Bonnyman, Joel Thomas, and Nemanja Bakovic. Voiceovers by Kelly Bonnyman. Guest research and content by Claire Gould and Corinne Castles. Project managed by Shannon Morrison. Produced and hosted by me, Ronsley Vaz. For more episodes and where to listen, go to mustamplify.com/POE.
Hey, it's Kaylee from Must Amplify. I'm the sound engineer for this volume of Psychology of Entrepreneurship. I'm a part of the team that made this production come alive. Our team consists of members from all around the globe, with our headquarters based in West End, Brisbane, Australia, the land of the drop bear. For more about the cool stuff that we're up to and to work out of our studios, head to mustamplify.com. Are you still listening? Here's our little gift to you for sticking around.
Ooh, okay. Hi, it's Ronsley. Hi. Stop laughing, Kelly. Hi. Fuck. Twilio. There. Ooh. You'll clean that up, yeah? Yeah.